Sergeant Briggs sees a lone woman behind the wheel of a BMW and thinks she's an easy target. Another civilian to dominate. But what he doesn't know, Lieutenant Commander Rene Dawson commands more than a car. She commands respect from thousands. Stick around, because when the dashcam footage rolls and Hat Badge Bully explodes, Briggs's badge won't shield him. It'll bury him. Power built on fear always falls hardest. Let us know where you're watching from, and what time you found this. We read every single comment. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any videos. Rain pelts the windshield of Sergeant Daniel Briggs's patrol car, each drop echoing his mounting anticipation. 15 years of enforcing his will on these streets has taught him to savor moments like these. The BMW's headlights pierce the darkness, and Sergeant Daniel Briggs's lips curl into a practiced smirk, his fingers drumming against the steering wheel with calculated precision. Night shift, car 247, initiating traffic stop on Maple Drive, Sergeant Daniel Briggs announces into his radio, his voice carrying that familiar edge of authority he's cultivated over his career. The dashcam's red light blinks steadily, recording what he assumes will be another routine demonstration of his power. The BMW pulls over with military precision. Too precise. Sergeant Daniel Briggs exits his patrol car, rainwater streaming down his face as he approaches the vehicle. His flashlight beam deliberately catches the driver's side mirror, a tactic he's perfected to establish dominance before the first word. "License and registration," he barks, watching with satisfaction as the beam reflects off his badge and into the driver's eyes. But Lieutenant Commander Rene Dawson's composed response sends an unexpected chill down his spine. "Of course, officer," she replies, her calm demeanor carrying an authority that makes Sergeant Daniel Briggs's hand instinctively touch his badge, his tangible symbol of power. Her military ID catches the light, and for a fraction of a second, his confidence wavers. "Step out of the vehicle," he orders, doubling down on his aggressive stance. The dashcam captures every moment, his widening stance, the slight tremor in his pointing finger, her dignified refusal to be intimidated. A cell phone light flickers from a nearby car. Sergeant Daniel Briggs notices but chooses to ignore it, focused on maintaining control. "I said, step out of the vehicle, ma'am," he repeats, voice rising. The ma'am comes out as a sneer. "Sergeant Briggs," Lieutenant Commander Dawson responds, her voice steady. "I'm addressing your unprofessional conduct with your supervisor tomorrow morning." Her calm certainty makes his stomach twist. Within minutes, the cell phone video hits social media. Hat Badge Bully starts trending locally, accompanied by clips of his aggressive stance and her composed responses. Sergeant Daniel Briggs feels the first tremors of his carefully constructed world beginning to shake. Inner reflection. Sitting in his patrol car later, Sergeant Daniel Briggs stares at his badge, remembering his academy graduation. "Power isn't just given," his mentor had said. "It's earned through respect." But somewhere along the way, he'd forgotten the difference between fear and respect. Now, watching his name trend for all the wrong reasons, he wonders, when did authority become more important than justice? Have you ever stood at the peak of your power, only to feel it crumbling beneath your feet? Type power if you've ever wanted to prove your authority, only to realize too late that true authority comes from respect, not fear. The night isn't over, and Sergeant Daniel Briggs's grip on his badge tightens as his phone buzzes with notifications. The real storm is just beginning, and for the first time in 15 years, his badge feels heavy with something other than pride. Sergeant Daniel Briggs's fingers hover over the keyboard, each keystroke feeling like lead as he types the familiar phrase, "resisted compliance," into his report. The words that once flowed effortlessly now mock him, echoing with hollow authority in the bustling precinct. 4 hours have passed since the incident, and the air feels thick with whispers and sidelong glances from colleagues who used to revere his perfect arrest record. His computer screen flickers with incoming notifications, dozens of calls from Naval Command demanding explanations. Lieutenant Commander Dawson's steely gaze from their encounter burns in his memory, those knowing eyes seeing right through his carefully constructed facade. Daniel unconsciously adjusts his badge, the metal suddenly cold against his chest. The body camera footage plays on his screen, and he can't look away. There it is, that signature smirk he never noticed before. The slight tilt of his head, just before escalating routine, stops into confrontations. One video after another reveals a pattern he'd refused to acknowledge. The extra pat-down on a black Navy officer, the random vehicle searches that weren't random at all, the tone that shifted from professional to predatory the moment he saw the driver's face. Just following protocol, he mutters to himself. But the statistics on his screen tell a different story. His hands tremble as he pulls up his stop record. 78% black drivers. Most released without citations. The evidence of his bias stares back at him in cold, unforgiving numbers. A junior officer passes his desk, deliberately taking the long route to avoid him. The same rookie who used to eagerly shadow him now won't meet his eyes. Daniel's throat tightens as he remembers teaching that rookie his techniques for identifying suspicious vehicles, techniques that now read like a manual for profiling. His phone buzzes incessantly. Badge Bully is trending, surpassing 100,000 shares. The comments flood in. Watch how he changes when he sees who's driving. Finally exposed. How many careers did he damage? A message from his old academy instructor pops up. Remember what I taught you about maintaining control of the situation? Daniel's hand instinctively moves to his badge, gripping it like a lifeline. He remembers those training days, the subtle nods of approval when he showed authority with certain suspects, the unspoken understanding of who needed to be kept in line. Studies on institutional bias fill his search history now. Articles he'd dismissed as liberal propaganda, suddenly reading like a blueprint of his career. Each paragraph feels like a personal indictment. Implicit bias, abuse of authority, systemic racism disguised as professional judgment. Lieutenant Zhang appears at his desk, her expression unreadable. Internal Affairs wants your complete stop records for the past 5 years. Her words hang in the air like a death sentence. All of them, Daniel. Every dash cam, every body cam, every report. He watches her walk away, remembering how he'd blocked her promotion 3 years ago, citing concerns about command presence. The real reason burns in his gut now, her complaints about his selective enforcement patterns. The precinct falls silent as Chief Morrison's heavy footsteps approach. Daniel clutches his badge tighter, the edges digging into his palm. The same badge that made him feel invincible now weighs like an anchor of accountability. Have you ever watched your carefully constructed reality crumble? Share your story of facing uncomfortable truths in the comments below. In the reflection of his darkened computer screen, Daniel sees himself clearly for the first time. Not the righteous enforcer of law and order, but something far more disturbing. The badge gleams accusingly under the fluorescent lights, no longer a symbol of pride, but a mirror reflecting years of unchecked power and prejudice. The facts are undeniable now. Each click through his record reveals another black service member delayed, another career potentially derailed, another abuse of power justified with the same recycled phrases. The system that protected him now hums with the machinery of accountability, and Daniel Briggs's empire of intimidation begins to crack at its foundation. Type "truth hurts" if you've ever had to face your own biases. The precinct clock ticks relentlessly toward revelation, and Sergeant Daniel Briggs's, once the department's shining example of authority, sits alone with his unraveling legacy, wondering how many lives were shaped by the prejudices he's only now beginning to recognize in himself. The station's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across Sergeant Daniel Briggs' face as he paces the empty break room, his phone vibrating relentlessly with notifications. 8 hours since the confrontation with Lieutenant Commander Dawson, and his carefully constructed world is splintering. The security footage from this morning plays on every local network, his sneer captured in crystal clarity as he barred Dawson's entry. At Briggs Gate trends nationwide, each refresh bringing thousands of new mentions. "Internal Affairs wants your record, Briggs." Chief Martinez's words echo in his skull like a death knell. Daniel Briggs clutches his badge, the metal cold against his trembling fingers. His reflection in the break room window shows a man he barely recognizes. Gone is the strutting authority figure of this morning, replaced by someone whose eyes dart nervously at every sound. The evidence mounts like an avalanche. Body cam footage from previous encounters surfaces online, each clip more damaging than the last. Daniel Briggs watches in horror as his pattern of behavior unfolds in high definition. The same aggressive stance, the same dismissive tone, the same abuse of power. His thumb hovers over his phone screen, where CNN requests an interview. The notification disappears beneath a flood of Twitter mentions. "Sir?" Officer Chen appears in the doorway, her expression carefully neutral. "They're asking for your laptop. All emails from the past 5 years." The words hit Daniel Briggs like physical blows. He remembers every message, every casual joke about keeping certain people in their place, every response from colleagues who enabled him with their silence. The badge weighs heavier with each passing minute. Daniel Briggs' fingers trace its surface, remembering how he'd polished it this morning, proud of its authority. Now it feels like a burning brand against his chest. Lieutenant Commander Dawson's words from their confrontation pierce through his mounting panic. "Your badge doesn't make you right, Officer Briggs. It makes you responsible." His phone chirps again. A news alert. The ACLU is involved now, calling for a full investigation into departmental practices. Daniel Briggs's throat constricts as he reads the statement. Sergeant Daniel Briggs's actions represent a systemic issue that demands immediate attention. The words blur before his eyes as he realizes this is bigger than just him. He's become the face of everything wrong with the system. In the bathroom mirror, Daniel Briggs stares at his reflection, remembering countless times he'd straightened his uniform here, feeling invincible. Now his hands shake as he splashes water on his face. The sound of running water can't drown out the whispers from passing colleagues or the constant buzz of his phone. "Have you ever watched your foundation crumble?" he whispers to his reflection. "Have you felt the ground shift beneath your feet, realizing too late that every brick you laid was placed on sand?" The man in the mirror offers no answers, only the truth he's been avoiding. His power was never truly his to wield. The day's end approaches, but Daniel Briggs knows there will be no escape. Tomorrow's papers are already being written, social media never sleeps, and somewhere Lieutenant Commander Dawson stands vindicated. His badge catches the fluorescent light one last time as he prepares to face the chief again. No longer a shield, but a symbol of everything he's about to lose. Drop a like if you've ever seen someone's power crumble before their eyes. The security cameras watch silently as Daniel Briggs walks down the corridor, his shoulders hunched, his step uncertain. The confident stride of this morning is gone, replaced by the halting gait of a man who sees his future dissolving with each passing hour. The sound of his footsteps echoes through the empty hallway, no longer the authoritative click of power, but the hollow sound of impending doom. Sergeant Daniel Briggs's polished shoes echoed through the precinct's marble corridors, each step heavier than the last. 18 hours had transformed his world from untouchable authority to crumbling empire. The review board chamber loomed before him, its oak doors more imposing than any suspect he'd ever confronted. "Sergeant Daniel Briggs's," Lieutenant Commander Dawson's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Take your seat." Daniel's fingers instinctively brushed against his badge, tucked in his pocket. The same badge he'd polished so proudly just yesterday. Now it felt like lead, weighing him down as the first body cam footage flickered to life on the wall-mounted screen. His own voice, harsh and authoritative, filled the room. "I said get out of the car, now!" The footage showed his familiar pattern, targeting minorities, escalating minor stops into confrontations, abuse masquerading as procedure. Clip after clip played, building an undeniable narrative of systematic discrimination. "Your social media presence isn't helping your case, Sergeant Daniel," Dawson continued, projecting a live stream of #BadgeBully trending statistics. 1 million shares and counting. Your actions have become a symbol of everything wrong with unchecked authority. Daniel's hands trembled as he watched his career implode in real time. Comments flooded the screen. "This is what power corruption looks like." His phone buzzed incessantly, news outlets requesting comments, former supporters distancing themselves, activists organizing protests outside the precinct. The badge in his pocket seemed to burn now. He pulled it out, staring at his warped reflection in its surface. 20 years of service reduced to a cautionary tale, his face plastered across every major network as the embodiment of police overreach. Type "Badge falls if you believe no one is above the law" scrolled across the bottom of news coverage, engagement numbers skyrocketing. "Sergeant Daniel Briggs's," Dawson's voice had shifted from stern to heavy with disappointment. "Do you understand the gravity of these violations?" The words caught in his throat. Yesterday's arrogance evaporated as the full weight of his actions crashed down. Each face from the footage flashed before him, people he'd humiliated, rights he'd violated, lives he'd impacted. His voice, barely a whisper, cracked. I do." The metallic click of his badge being placed on the review board's table echoed like a gunshot. Outside, protesters' chants grew louder. "Bad cops fall, justice for all." His empire hadn't merely crumbled, it had imploded spectacularly, broadcast live for the world to witness. Sergeant Daniel Briggs's, once the precinct's untouchable enforcer, now sat exposed, his abuse of power laid bare before millions. "Share this moment to show power must answer to justice." The hashtag continued trending, his downfall becoming a rallying cry for accountability. The chamber's heavy doors opened, and camera flashes exploded like lightning. Sergeant Daniel Briggs's walk of shame had begun, each step echoing with the weight of consequences too long delayed. "Have you witnessed power crumble? Drop a 2 for accountability." His hands shook as he faced the media circus, the badge no longer his shield, but his sentence. The truth he'd ignored for 20 years finally broke through. Power without accountability doesn't protect. It corrupts, absolutely and inevitably. As Daniel Briggs placed his polished badge on the chief's desk, his hands trembled, not from fear this time, but from the crushing weight of understanding. 24 hours had transformed his world completely. The morning sun streaming through the precinct windows no longer felt like a spotlight on his authority. Instead, it exposed every shadow of his past misdeeds. "I never thought it would end like this," he whispered, fingers lingering on the cold metal one last time. The badge caught the light, reflecting a distorted version of his face, a fitting metaphor for how power had warped his perspective all these years. The sharp click of the badge against wood echoed through the empty office, a sound that would haunt his dreams for years to come. Lieutenant Commander Dawson's reforms were already reshaping the department. In the break room, officers gathered around a screen showing the viral footage of Daniel's abuse of power, now a mandatory part of the department's new training program. Daniel Falls had evolved into police reform, with millions sharing their own stories of encountering officers who, like him, had forgotten their true purpose. Standing at his locker for the final time, Daniel Briggs methodically removed 15 years of accumulated authority, commendations that now felt hollow, photographs of proud moments that carried a different meaning. His fingers brushed against the back wall, finding the creased photograph he'd hidden years ago, his academy graduation. Young eyes bright with genuine desire to serve and protect. "I remember that kid," he murmured, voice thick with regret. He wanted to make a difference, not make people fear him. A younger officer passed by, deliberately avoiding eye contact, the same way Daniel had taught countless civilians to look away in fear. The department's new oversight committee would meet tomorrow, implementing changes that Daniel's downfall had catalyzed. Body cameras would now be mandatory, with weekly footage reviews. Complaint procedures were being streamlined, with civilian oversight integrated into every level of command. His resistance to these changes seemed foolish now, rooted in the same arrogance that had led to his disgrace. Daniel carried his box of belongings through the precinct corridor, each step echoing with memories of his intimidating stride that once made others scatter. Now, officers and civilians alike watched openly as he walked past, his shame on full display. Outside, reporters waited with cameras ready, but Daniel didn't dodge them this time. He stopped, facing the media he'd once threatened. "Power without accountability isn't authority. It's abuse," he stated, his voice carrying the weight of hard-earned wisdom. "I forgot that the badge means serving justice, not wielding power. If my story prevents one officer from making my mistakes, maybe that's the first truly good thing I've done with my authority." The video of his statement went viral within hours, joining the montage of his downfall that had sparked nationwide police reform discussions. His badge would indeed become a teaching tool, displayed in the department's training center alongside the timeline of changes it inspired. New recruits would study his case, learning that true authority flows from justice and community trust, not fear and intimidation. That evening, as Daniel Briggs watched the sunset from his home for the last time before his sentencing, his phone buzzed with notifications. The hashtag #PowerToJustice was trending, with millions sharing their hopes for a new era of accountable policing. His story had become more than a cautionary tale. It was now a catalyst for genuine change. "We've all seen power corrupt," his final social media post read, "but today, I learned that accountability can heal. To every officer watching, Your authority comes from the trust of those you serve, not the fear you instill. I learned too late, but you don't have to. Drop A if you believe real change starts with accountability. Share this story to remind those in power that authority without justice cannot stand. Together, we can ensure that badges everywhere symbolize protection, not persecution. His journey from power to disgrace would be studied in police academies across the country, proof that systemic change often begins with personal transformation. Daniel Briggs's badge, once a symbol of intimidation, had become a permanent reminder that true authority serves justice, not personal power.